Lou and his grandson Tommy, in his grandfather's arms, are in the kitchen, and Lou is about to sneak one of Dee Dee's freshly baked carob tofu clusters for himself. Dee Dee, however, comes and catches her father-in-law in the act and tells him that the clusters are for after dinner. Lou protests, "After dinner? Why, in my day, we were lucky if we had dinner." Lou then brings Tommy out in the backyard and puts him in his sandbox, where his friends Chucky, Phil, and Lil are already playing. Dee Dee's walking out the front door and walks to her car as she's leaving. As Lou sits down in a backyard recliner and reads a newspaper, his son Stu comes out carrying a large contraption shaped like an oversized duck. Lou asks Stu what it is, and he explains it's for his latest invention, the Stu Pickles patented Quack-O-Matic. Stu further explains that it's first fully automated weather vane, and that it tells the temperature in 10 cities, gives a 6-month weather forecast, and predicts earthquakes, floods, and meteor showers. Lou then asks his son if it tells which way the wind is blowing, and Stu replies, "I'm working on it, I'm working on it." Stu then walks over to a ladder he has up against the house, and Lou goes inside through the back door. Meanwhile, in the sandbox, as Phil and Lil are burying Chucky in the sand, Tommy, having overheard his father, remarks, "Wow, a duck that can tell you everything." Lil notices Tommy's dad climbing the ladder with his invention, nearly falling off backwards as he struggles up to the garage roof and loses his balance. And she remarks, "Looks like your dad's fighting with the duck." Her brother Phil adds, "Looks like the duck's winning." Chucky wonders why Stu and the duck are fighting, and Phil figures that the duck refuses to tell Stu stuff. As the babies walk over and Stu continues to dangerously struggle with his balance and almost fall off the ladder, Lil figures that perhaps Stu has to fight the duck before it can tell him stuff. As Stu regains his balance and slams his Quack-O-Matic into place on the roof, Lou comes out and tells his son that his friend Louise invited him over and asks Stu to look after the babies for the afternoon. Stu, who's now attaching his invention to the roof, replies, "Sure, Pop, whatever you say." Lou then bids his son goodbye and excitedly dances away. As soon as Lou is gone, Stu, who is now home alone with the babies standing very dangerously on the edge of the roof, finishes and eagerly activates his Quack-O-Matic by pressing a button on its base. It seems to work okay, and Stu is satisfied, and the babies look onward with curiosity. But just as Stu turns his back to get back to his ladder, his invention spins around and swing knocks Stu clean off the roof. Stu, who is literally frightened out of his shoes, screams sheer bloody murder as he plummets straight toward the babies, who run out of the way, themselves screaming in fright, just in time as Stu hits the cold hard ground head first. Luckily, Stu isn't seriously injured, but he's knocked unconscious. The babies, who don't understand that Stu had just had an extremely serious accident, walk over to Tommy's motionless father, and Chucky wonders what happened to him. Phil figures Stu's taking a nap. Just then, Stu regains consciousness and sits up. In a slightly higher-pitched voice than usual, he says, "Cuckoo." Tommy and his friends step back away from Stu, and then Stu suspiciously gets on all fours and begins to crawl back and forth. Chucky wonders what Stu's doing, and Tommy replies that he doesn't know. Stu then sits down, opens his mouth, and blows a big bubble with his saliva. Lil remarks that she never blew one so big. Stu then begins to suck on his tongue, and Tommy figures that his father growed down. It's now apparent that Stu's severe head injury mentally brought him back to his infancy, or in Tommy's words, turned him into a baby. Lil suggests that she and her friends play with the new baby Stu, but Tommy remarks that he isn't sure that it's weird having his dad being a baby. Stu then turns around, faces his son and friends, and he introduces himself. Since he's baby self, he's now able to talk to his infant son and his friends and vice versa. "Hi, I'm Stuie. Who are you?" Tommy replies, "Hi, Stuie. I'm Tommy." Stuie replies, "Hi, Tommy. Wanna play?" Tommy pauses for a moment and accepts Stuie's invitation to play, and Tommy then introduces Stuie to his 3 friends. Chucky greets him, "Hi, Mr. Stuie." Chucky's greeting makes Stuie giggle. He remarks, "You're funny, Chucky." Chucky remarks that Stu talks like a baby, but doesn't look like one. Lil agrees and states that Stuie needs a diaper. Phil wonders where they'll find a big enough diaper for Stuie to wear, and Tommy then points out white sheets that are hanging on a clothesline. The babies grab one of these sheets and bring over to Stuie and surround him, telling him to hold still. The babies then pounce on Stuie with the sheets, knocking him on his back, wrap it around the shorts that he's wearing, and tie it up. Phil, Lil, and Stu then remark, "Yeah, that's better." Tommy then decides to take Stewie inside to show him his toys. They all walk over to the back door, and Phil and Lil get in position so that Tommy can climb on them and reach the doorknob. But Stewie, since he's much taller, is of course able to reach the doorknob and open the door. No problem, Chucky remarks. "Wow, that was pretty neat." Tommy, as he gets down off Phil and Lil, says that Stewie, whom he merely refers to as my dad, could also do lots of other neat stuff. Phil asks what Tommy means, and Tommy explains that because Stewie is so tall, he can reach all the things that he and his friends want, but can't ever get because they're too small. Tommy first takes his friends and Stewie over to a closet so that they can get down Christmas presents he believes Mom is keeping high on a shelf inside. Stewie, standing on a chest, grabs a box, remarking, "Wow, sure is a lot of neat toys," and takes it out. Stewie loses his balance, falls on his behind, and drops the box. Stewie, however, isn't hurt, and the box lands neatly on the floor. The box, however, doesn't contain any Christmas presents, nor toys for that matter, but the babies are mesmerized by its contents, which, among other things, consists of clothing, makeup, jewelry, and stationery. Anyway, and take them out to play with them, making a big mess in the process. Tommy then wonders if Stewie can reach the cookies, and the babies are eager to have him try cookies. The babies and Stewie sit down on the floor with full stomachs and messy faces. Stewie apparently found lots of cookies, and he and the babies ate them like never before. As they're sitting, Chucky remarks that it doesn't get any better than this, and the others agree. Chucky then asks what they should do next, and Tommy suggests that Stewie could look for more cookies, but Chucky replies that he's much too full for any more, and he also belches. Phil says that there must be something else high up only Stewie can reach, and then Tommy gets another idea. They all go into the bathroom and into the bathtub, which also doubles as shower, and Stewie turns on the shower nozzle. Water starts flowing out, and Stewie and the babies, who all still have their clothes on, start to get drenched and dance around. Meanwhile, however, Dee Dee arrives back at the house and goes inside, unaware of what's been happening. Back in the bathroom, Chucky remarks to Tommy that he's getting wet, and questions why they're doing what they're doing, and Tommy replies, "'Cause it's fun, Chucky." Dee Dee walks up to the closed bathroom door, but, not knowing any better, only assumes her husband is taking a shower after all his hard work. Dee Dee remarks to Stu, not knowing what's really happening, as the invention looks great. Meanwhile, Stewie puts a rubber ducky into his mouth and begins to make noises, which Dee Dee hears and assumes it is her husband responding to remarks and questions. Dee Dee asks if the babies are still in the backyard with Lou, unaware that Lou had left earlier, and she takes the noises her husband is making as a yes. As Dee Dee continues talking, she mentions that she came home to get a checkbook so she can buy a crystal vase. Phil helps Stewie out by pulling the rubber ducky out of his mouth. As soon as the rubber ducky is out, Stu begins to whine hysterically, and Dee Dee assumes that it's because her husband doesn't want her to spend their money on the vase. Dee Dee mentions it's too good of a bargain to pass up, and Stewie says, "Cuckoo," as Phil gives him the rubber ducky back. And Dee Dee assumes that Stu decided to agree with her, and she mentions, "Oh, you're such a doll. I just know you won't regret this. Gotta run." Dee Dee then leaves the house again, still not suspecting a thing, and the group opens the door and emerges from the bathroom soaking wet. Tommy remarks that his mother is gone and it's time to play. Later on, the group, now dried off, plays in the living room with Tommy's toys. As Stewie is shaking Tommy's rattle, Lil asks Stewie if he'd like to play with the doll she's holding. Stu grabs the doll by the head but doesn't give Lil a chance to let go. He accidentally pulls the doll's head off and knocks Lil to the ground. This upsets Lil and she begins to cry. Seeing Lil cry upset Stewie, and he also begins to cry, quite loudly and quite hysterically with a wide open mouth, sounding something like this. Chucky remarks to Tommy that it sounds like trouble, and they begin to make their way over. As Stewie continues to cry loudly and hysterically, Lil, who stopped crying in awe of Stu's crying, remarks, "We accompanied with one of the remarks, wow, he can really cry." Tommy asks Stewie what's wrong, and Stewie calms down and says, "Toy broke." Tommy optimistically is then about to suggest they get his father to fix it. "Don't worry, when Daddy gets home, he'll fit." But Tommy then stops mid-sentence when he immediately realizes with sorrow that Stewie is his dad turned into a baby, thus can't see his real dad, whom he still loves. While he's Stewie, Phil and Lil try to cheer Tommy up by mentioning that he now has Stuie to play with and they can both get Christmas presents, eat cookies, and get in trouble. But Tommy, getting sadder, says it isn't the same as having his real daddy. He then turns to Stewie and goes on, "When you were my daddy, you'd build toys, especially for me, and read me stories, and tuck me in at night, and I miss my daddy!" And Tommy begins to cry sorrowfully. Chucky, Phil, and Lil walk up to Stewie and they tell him that he's going to have to go back to a big person so he can be Tommy's daddy again. Stewie, however, protests that he doesn't want to. Tommy remarks, "Can you blame him? Who'd want to be growing up if you could stay little forever?" Chucky agrees, "Not me." Tommy is seen in his parents' bedroom sitting on their bed, looks at the pictures on a dresser of the good times he and his dad had together, sobbing quietly. Stewie walks in and sits on the bed next to Tommy. He says to him, "You miss your daddy? Huh, Tommy?" Tommy replies, "Yep." Stewie then remarks that Chucky told him that he should be Tommy's daddy. Tommy replies that he couldn't ask Stewie to do that, but Stewie says that he's willing to try, and Tommy hugs Stewie, feeling happy again. They all go back into the living room, and Chucky drags the telephone by its receiver, only for it is Stewie. He asks Stewie if he's ready to be grown up before handing the phone's receiver to Stewie, and explains that you use it to talk to yourself, since Chucky doesn't quite yet understand how a telephone is used. Stewie briefly examines the receiver and then puts it on his head. Phil and Lil then drag over a briefcase and open it, and they explain to Stewie that you carry your grown-up toys in it. Stewie then takes the telephone's receiver off his head, puts it in the briefcase, and closes it on the receiver's cord. As Stewie picks up the briefcase, Tommy brings over a newspaper, and Tommy instructs Stewie to take it in the bathroom and don't come out till practically forever. Stewie, however, seems overwhelmed and realizes that taking these things aren't making him grown up again. In frustration, he begins to cry the same way he did earlier. The babies then brainstorm on what they should do now, and after two other suggestions, Tommy remembers the duck. Stewie stops crying and wonders what the duck is, and the babies explain that the duck lives on top of the garage, that since the duck knows all, he explained to Stewie how to be a grown-up. "I'll go outside and walk over to where the duck is." The ladder Stu is using to put on the roof is still where it was before. Stu then shouts up to it, "Hello, Mr. Duck," but Tommy then explains that Stewie needs to climb up and fight the duck or it won't tell him anything. Stewie admits that he's scared, but Tommy states that everyone gets scared sometimes, but he can't be scared all the time. Stewie then replies he'll try to fight the duck, and he walks over to the ladder and begins to climb it, although using his legs on the rungs instead of his feet. Chucky remarks that he's the bravest baby I ever saw. Stewie then reaches the duck and grabs onto it, but as he begins to wrap his legs around the base, he accidentally hits the same button he pressed earlier as his regular self, and this activates the duck and starts flapping and spinning again. Stu tries to hang on and fight as the babies cheer him on, but he loses his balance and is once again knocked clean off the roof. Once again, Stu screams sheer bloody murder as he once again plummets straight toward the babies, who once again run out of the way just in time as Stu once again hits the ground head first. Like last time, Stu isn't seriously injured, but he is once again knocked unconscious. Tommy walks over and says, "Are you okay, Stewie?" Stu immediately regains consciousness, but this time he's no longer a baby. He's back to his normal grown-up self again. Stu sits up and remarks that his invention looks nice, and then he notices he's holding his son's rattle and tosses it aside next to Tommy's feet. He then gets up and directs the babies into the house, and he also picks up his son and gives him a ride. Tommy giggles in loving delight as he's picked up. As they all go in through the back, Dee Dee arrives back home again and going in through the front. As Stu puts the babies in the playpen, unaware that he's still wearing the white sheet as a diaper, he hears his wife state that she's back, and he replies, "Be right there." Tommy states it's great to have things back to normal, but then Dee Dee asks what her husband is doing wearing the white sheet and yells at him. Stu's quack-o-matic quacks twice.